Welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. I'm Sharon, your resident skeptic who asks all the tough questions. And with me is Jennifer Neal, our manifesting maestro. Whether you're rolling your eyes or raising your vibration, we dive into all things manifestation, mindset, and energy from every side. Hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready for spirited debates, surprising experiments, and laughter on the journey to creating a life you love. Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to 2026. We're excited here at Manifest This Believer versus Skeptic to roll into the new year. And you may recall our last podcast, Jennifer made a little promise about giving us a workshop. So today we're going to talk about becoming in 2026, why alignment makes action effortless. Okay, Jennifer, this is a little bit of work for you today as we lead off this new year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I'm very excited. Guys, everybody listening, you have an opportunity to turn this next year into a year like you've never had before. But it's not because of a goal list or a list of things to accomplish or try to change. It really can be a year of identity shifting. So we're going to walk through that today. I think we're probably going to run around 30 minutes, maybe longer. Stick around. And here we go. So yes, last episode, we talked about the vibration of a new year, not resolutions, right? Not hustle, not grinding, not sweating, but the frequent, well, maybe sweating if working out and becoming a healthier version of you.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Right? But what frequency do you want to carry into January? And I want to do this exercise myself too, right? So like, what are we taking into the new year? So we're going to take that idea one step further, because here's the truth that nobody actually explains. You don't achieve the year you want. You become the person who lives it. I'm going to say that again. You don't achieve the year you want. You become the person who lives it. And once that happens, the to-do lists stop and, well, they stop becoming a fight.
If you're listening and thinking, great, here comes the woo, just stay with us. Because I think what we're actually talking about today is a lot more with identity psychology and decision fatigue, and why some years feel lighter even when you're doing more.
Exactly. Okay. So this episode is a mini workshop. You don't need a journal. You don't need a vision board. You don't even need to pause the podcast. I just want you to, if you're with us, I want you to listen and I want you to let this land. Okay?
Okay, Jen, why don't you start off and tell us why most goals fail?
Because most people plan their year backwards. They start with the tasks. I should work out more. I should make more money. I should be more disciplined. I should stop procrastinating. But none of those stick. And you know they don't, because here you are in 2020, the end of 2025, and you had the same ones at the beginning of the year, and you're still in the same spot, right? They're not anchored to anything. They're not anchored to who you want to become or who you are becoming.
Okay, and it's using that same phrase should, and you're shoulding all over yourself. So
Totally.
I think from a psychological standpoint, this makes sense. So if your identity is saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm behind, I'm always catching up, then it doesn't matter how you operationalize that productivity system. Nothing's going to survive those stories you're telling yourself. Your brain is going to default back to that familiar version of who you are, that story you tell yourself, and that story you choose to live.
Totally. It's all about the stories. Totally. And energetically, the same thing. You can't force outcomes from an identity that doesn't match them. Okay. So that's why we're flipping the process today.
Okay, so let's talk about how we start that. There's some type of core reframe, right?
Totally. So for the next part of the episode, I want you to stop thinking about what you want to get in 2026. And instead, we're going to ask one question. Who are you at the end of 2026? Not what you did, not what you accomplished, who you are.
So it's less like the manifesting and more like being really clear on your identity. And so what you said last week was when your identity is clear, your behavior will follow automatically.
Totally. Okay.
Okay, let's start part one.
O-
How do we do this?
Okay. So, part one of this little tiny workshop is an identity snapshot. Okay. So, wherever you are, and if you think this is woo, you can leave now, but I want you to close your eyes. If closing your eyes is woo and you don't like woo, bye bye. Close your eyes if you can. And if not, just soften your focus. What does that mean? For me, softening my focus actually means focusing on something and almost going a little bit cross eyed. Okay? Just soften. Just go a little bit blurry. I want you to imagine that it's 2026, December 2026. You're not rushing. You're not scrambling. You're reflecting. Ask yourself quietly, how do I move through my days now? What feels easy now that used to feel heavy? I'm already answering these for myself, by the way. Like I can already feel what I want me to be next year. What am I no longer available for? Okay. Notice the energy, not the achievements.
This is interesting because I think in psychology we see it like athletes do this, executives do this. The brain responds to future based identity imagery. Like if you're an athlete, you're standing on the podium. If you're an executive, everything's in the green. So you're essentially giving your nervous system a new default setting.
Totally. And let's not forget, we've talked about this in the past podcast episodes. Your brain does not know the difference between your 3D reality world and what it sees in your imagination. It doesn't know the difference. So if you
Right.
keep showing yourself in your imagination what you want the answers to these questions to be, how you're now moving, what feels easy now, what you're no longer available for or acting inside of, your brain doesn't know the difference. Okay. So I'm going to add one more question to that. What version of me would make this year inevitable? Not lucky, not grinding, not hustle, inevitable.
Okay. Wow. That sounds pretty heavy.
Well, it can be, but again, if you you have to sit quietly, guys. You have to sit quietly. You have to turn off all the noise, turn off the podcast. Yes, even this one. Sit quietly and let the universe drop some ideas into your head. Okay.
Okay. So what's the next step?
Yeah, sure. Part two, alignment check in. So, okay. So now let's look at alignment, not effort. Big difference. Ask yourself, what drains me that 2026 me will simply not tolerate? Number two, where am I leaking energy to prove, to please, or to perform? That's a biggie. And number three, what feels misaligned but familiar? These are big, deep questions. You're right, Sharon. So you don't need to fix this today. You just need to see that version of you that you no longer want to be anymore.
So I think this is where our cognitive load comes in because when your life is cluttered with obligations that don't match your identity or the identity that you want to be, everything just feels harder than it should.
Totally. Listen, alignment isn't doing more. It's actually doing less of what isn't you anymore. So here's an example. We spent 3 Christmases not in our home this year. And for one of them, I actually considered making sugar dough cookie raw dough, packing it in my suitcase so that I could bake the sugar cookies that we have every year at these remote Christmases all over North America practically. And then I went for a second and I went, Jennifer, this is ridiculous. Let that version of you go. It isn't important. We can create new traditions and we can create new experiences. So, it's letting go of that's a lot of work. Packing
Yeah.
dough and putting it in your suitcase and thinking about that with on top of everything else. So I chose to not do it this year. And so, listen, again, as I said, alignment isn't doing more. Sometimes it's not even doing the same. It's doing less of what isn't you anymore.
Okay. So you really want to get clear on how you want to be in 2026 and getting rid of all that clutter. So give us some really good no brainer actions that we can do.
Okay. So here's where the magic, or basically It is psychology. Like, here's where this psychology happens. Ask yourself, if I were already this version of myself, what would feel obvious this month? Okay, not scary, not overwhelming, just obvious. Okay, one action, one shift, one boundary. That's it. So, using myself as an example, if I want to be making a living out of the content that you and I are deep into right now, if the version of me had already accomplished making this my career, what would feel so obvious to me? Showing up every day, doing things that I don't like, even though they're part of the piece that gets me to that outcome. Not scary, not overwhelming, just obvious. They are obvious tasks. That's
Right.
it.
Okay, so when I think about my own example,
Yeah.
then I think about the identity that I wanna have of being a fully whole and healthy person.
Yes.
And I then think about the actions that I do that help me feel that way. So, playing pickleball as much as I can makes me feel like I don't need to be motivated to go to a gym or jog outside because that stuff drives me nuts. But an hour and a half of playing pickleball and the heart rate goes up and it's play, that feels good to me. So that's almost like just do the stuff that feels easy, not no pain, no gain.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not easy though, right? Like, so what are some other parts of feeling healthy and whole that you struggle with right now? What do you have to force yourself to do right now?
That's a good question.
Uh,
I think it's less about what I have to do and more about how I talk to myself. Because what's super frustrating for me is trying to build strength when I knew I had the strength a year ago and I don't have it now. And I talk to myself in a frustrated way, like, but you were X and now you're Y, and it's not happening fast enough.
So, what would the version of you that's already the identity you want to be, what would feel obvious,
Probably you did a great job. You're back at full health. A way to go. It was a
yeah,
struggle, but here you
right?
are. I'm proud of you for doing that.
Right. So it's just obvious. You're just obviously proud of yourself. It's just part of your day, part of your being,
That's
right?
interesting because it feels so neutral and almost boring, but I guess that's a sign that it's actually working.
Totally. That's a great point. That's
Okay.
boredom. Like, that's a great point. This is just part of who I am. I do it every day. I get up and go to
Right.
the gym. I don't
So,
brag about it anymore.
yeah, so I
It's just who I
guess
am.
the reason that it doesn't feel like pressure is because it's not about willpower. It's just about you're not forcing your habits and you're reducing that internal conflict of you're not there yet. You're just assuming you're already there.
Yeah, totally. Right. So let's integrate that a little bit. So, from an energetic perspective, resistance disappears when alignment appears. So, you stop asking, how do I make this happen? And you start asking, what would be out of character for me now? Okay.
Wow, that's pretty powerful because behavior changes really fast when something feels out of identity.
Right. So if I use myself as an example again, if posting every day is part of the identity that I am becoming, and I stop posting every day, that would be out of character for the person that I am. That
Okay.
right? I'll give you another example. Right now, people are commenting on my posts secretly and quietly. They're not commenting on the post itself. They're sending me messages telling me that it's really helping them. The version of me that's doing this for a living, that won't be a surprise to people anymore. They'll just say, "Oh, there she is again in my inbox."
Right.
Right?
Yeah. You're talking about this whole integration thing, and I get that. But I think from a practical perspective, it would be helpful to know what sort of questions we should be reflecting on. Because I know for me, it's sort of easy to get this big framework stuff. But what do you think we should sit down and maybe work our way through some questions? I keep going back to that idea. One of the reasons why we did this is because I want an owner's manual or a user's manual to really get this. So, do you think you've got some suggestions?
Yeah. So there are 6 areas that I think we can be asking ourselves questions in to get us to what we really want to be. To be. Who do you want to be? Let's go through them. We're going to go through them high level, but the full list of questions called becoming for 2026 will be available as a download in the link above, the link in the podcast above. So if you want the full list of becoming questions for 2026, make sure to check it out in the store in the link in the podcast. Okay?
Sounds great. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, so here we go. This is high level. Section 1. Who am I becoming? This is your core identity. So the questions in this section are going to move you out of goals and into self-definition. Okay? So, for example, when you picture yourself at the end of 2026, how do you carry yourself differently? Literally, your body. How do you carry yourself differently? Okay.
That's a pretty deep one.
Yeah. So it is deep. And, from your perspective, Sharon, people that need a little bit more of the skeptical side, think about it this way. Think about this as identity clarity. Okay. Not fantasy. So for us believers, we can go into a fantasy state, imagination state, and really think about this. But if you struggle with that, think about this as just identity clarity. Who do you actually recognize yourself becoming? Does that make sense to you, Sharon?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
How would you rephrase that?
That's a good question. Think, when you were saying this, what popped into my head was a strategic plan for an organization.
Okay,
You
go
have
with
sort
that.
of the five things you want the company to be by the end of the year, and then all the little things that you're going to do. Now, I could be looking at this too much from that analysis perspective. But if you're a company that wants to hold certain values, you write down your values. And that's part of what you live as an organization every single day with every single action.
Perfect. Great. Love it. So if the company wants to be something at the end of the year, I think this is actually a great way of thinking about it. If something wants to be something different at the end of next year, they have to get clear on, finish that off for me,
On their strategic values.
right? And go a little deeper into that. What does that mean for someone that doesn't understand strategic values?
They have to be clear on what they are articulating to the world every single day.
Awesome. I love that. Do you see the parallel?
Yeah, I do actually.
Sometimes I think the business and the woo really are like if we just treated our own identity like a business and a
Yeah,
business that's stuck to their stuff, right? You can't be a business that says one thing and does another. But that's what we're
right.
talking about.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you want to be healthy and then you drink a bottle of wine every night. It doesn't correlate. Okay. So there's a lot more in this section, folks. I've got them all in a handout for you. If you want it, again, check out the store, but we're going to keep moving on in really the big ideas here. So section 2, the questions in section 2 revolve around how do I make decisions now? You'll love this one, Sharon. So this reveals your internal operating system. So Sharon, tell us about operations in business. How does this correlate? How do I make decisions now?
So I guess every decision that you're making is one that has to go back up to whatever your values or strategy is. So you don't make a decision, for example, if you take health as an example, you don't make a decision to eat those cookies if what you're looking for is to be a more healthy person. So if as a business, one of your goals in serving your clients is to ensure that you have an on-time delivery. Every day, you're ensuring operationally that there aren't any barriers that prevent you from doing that.
I love that, right? I love that. And so that's great. And again, I'll use myself as an example. If I have made the decision that I want to become someone that makes a living from putting this content out to the world, then how do I make decisions now? If I get up one morning, I did this yesterday. And one of my posts, I was like, I don't really want to put that one out on Facebook because they're going to judge me. What would the version of Jennifer do at the end of the year? Would she have even questioned putting that out? Not a chance, right? There's no room for insecurity in my new becoming.
So I think this is kind of interesting when I look at it from a risk perspective. And we're
Okay.
always evaluating risk in business and whether or not there's a return on the investments that we make in order for us to get to our end goal. And I think what you've just described to me as I listened to it is there was a risk there for you because you didn't want to be judged, and that's a risk for you. But on the larger strategic goal you had, you could see that taking the risk was probably good for your return on your investment in terms of who you want to become. So I think this whole thing about us as humans taking more strategic risks help us to become clearer on who we want to become.
Yeah, totally. And you have to then make a decision. That's what we're talking about. How do I make decisions now? You have to decide, do you really want that?
Yeah,
Do you really want to become that? Because if you want to become that, you've got to do this.
right.
That's how actions become aligned with the becoming.
So let me ask you this. What if you get partway down the road and you're like, this isn't working for me? This isn't me. How do you
Fine.
pivot without feeling like you've wasted time?
You just pivot. Like, what would the version of you do? Do you think the version of me that wanted to pivot would spend eternity battling it out in my head about whether or not all the wasted time? Just pivot, for goodness sake.
Well, some people do.
Yes, some people do. Like, I remember, and I've talked about this before, a friend of mine who was a meat eating person saw something that made her change her mind. And the next day, she became a vegetarian and she never ate a meat product again, ever again, ever.
Right.
Decisions can be instantaneous, folks. We put way too much weight into them.
Well, and that's what
Okay.
I often call, analysis paralysis. There's only so many times you can go over it when you just need to make the decision and take the risk.
Well, believe you me, I know some people that will go over it for the rest of their life. You can, again, that's a decision.
Yeah.
Get over yourself, right? Like, just get over yourself.
Okay, so give us another big question.
Okay. But before I leave that one about decisions, I want to say, like, how do I make the decision now? Ask yourself, are you prepared to not get what you want to be if doing that one thing or making that one decision diverted you from that becoming? Are you prepared to not become what you want to become if the decision you make doesn't align with that? Ask yourself that.
So that sounds like, are you ready to live with the consequences of not becoming if you
Yes.
choose not to make the decision?
Yes. Like, I have decided in my soul with me and myself and I that I am not prepared to die, which is inevitable for all of us. I am not prepared to die and to get up to heaven and have my chat with God and for him to say to me, Jennifer, I gave you this massive opportunity. I gave you the voice. I gave you the ideas. I gave you the confidence that most people don't have to get in front of people and speak. Why didn't you use that? I'm not prepared to have that conversation. And therefore, that means there are certain things I need to do.
Okay, so
Okay.
what's the next big question?
So here, section number 3, series of questions for you all to meditate on. What feels effortless? So we're
Okay.
talking about aligned action. So effortlessness is the tell. Make sense?
It makes sense. It goes back to the idea that where we tend to undervalue ourselves
Mm-hmm.
in business and elsewhere is when we do stuff we really enjoy doing and we do it really, really well. I think we tend to undervalue our worth because we're like, that's easy. I could do that in my sleep.
Yeah.
Not realizing that, yeah, but 90% of the planet can't.
Right.
And that's where your value is. So this is where I'm hearing your effortlessness being part of who we are and accepting that it's a good thing.
It is, but don't be fooled by this. Effortless doesn't start out effortless. It starts out forced.
Okay.
Right? Like, again, using myself as an example, some days it's not easy to get up, record, and put it out on 6 platforms. I
Hmm.
still have to force myself to do that, especially on Facebook. But I know if I keep doing it, it will feel effortless soon. It already feels effortless in some areas. So don't think this is going to be a walk in the park all the time, folks, because it's not.
Right.
But if you really want to be that person, it will feel forced until it feels effortless. But once it feels effortless, oh, by gum, you're there.
Okay, great. What's the
Okay.
next big question for us?
Okay. So the next section that there are a series of questions for y'all to meditate on. What no longer fits, what no longer fits. So this is the energetic and the emotional cleanup. And this part's hard. Listen, getting everything you want in life is easy. However, if you really want what you say you want, there is some uncomfortable moments in this, right? This is, but this part is often the most revealing part. What drains you? Here's a good example. What drains you that you no longer rationalize? Does that make sense to you?
Ooh, give me a little more with that one.
So we talked about this in the last podcast, but like, what are you doing? Maybe you're going through the motions on something. Maybe you're showing up in a way that you've always shown up and you don't even want to do that anymore. What parts of you that drain you? You know this.
Right.
Are you no longer going to participate in any longer? And I'll give everybody a good example. We all do this. Let's say you've got some dates on the calendar that you have said yes to, and the day comes and you have been up with the kids all night, or you've been working late deadlines, or you've been running around taking care of aging and sick parents, whatever it is. And you know, if you go to that thing, you're going to come home drained and exhausted. But you told them you'd show up. You should go. It's really honing in on that kind of stuff and making a choice for the person you're becoming now.
This
What
sounds
does she need? What does he need?
an awful lot like giving yourself a lot of grace here.
Totally. And again, there's discomfort in that sometimes. Like I went to a party in November and 40 people RSVP'd and half of them showed up. And food was bought based on 40
Yeah.
and drink was bought based on 40 and everything was based on 40. And so one at a time, things came up that people had to drop out of that thing for. And if they had said to themselves, yeah, but she bought food and drink for 40 and I'm one of the, and I'm not going to go and I'm impacting this. We can change our minds over stuff like that. And listen, I've been the host too, where you've been left with way too much, but you have to make decisions for yourself. So you're right. Give yourself the grace and the space to make decisions for who you're becoming.
Okay.
And then
So what
maybe make better decisions going forward about those kind of over engagements, right?
or a little earlier, right?
Right.
I think on the other side of it too, I mean, it's unfortunate if you were the host. There's no question you would have had disappointment around it. But
Right.
maybe the flip side is, okay, now I've got all these leftovers, or I can invite other people over for the weekend and we could do it that way, or what have you. I mean, I know that, as a host, I probably would have been kind of disappointed, but as much as you want to give grace to yourself, you want to give grace to others as well.
Totally. And I think at some point we go so deep into this, we forget why we're here. We're here because everybody wants some things in their life. They want to be, do, and have certain things in their life. And in order to get those things in your life to manifest, we have to become different versions of ourselves.
Right.
We have to show up with a different identity than we have in the past, or you're going to continue get the same results that are making you so miserable today. That's why this matters.
Okay. What's the next one?
So, next section, how do I relate to myself?
Okay.
How do I learn to trust myself? How do I learn that this new concept of myself? How do I learn to trust that new concept of myself? So, this locks the identity in. So, in other words, I trust that by making that decision, it's leading me in the direction of where I'm going. It's trusting that by not getting triggered by all the stuff that you used to get triggered by, that's part of the path and journey to getting where you want to go.
Right. This sounds a lot too like you're rewriting your story. Whatever that past story is that you've lived in, you're now making the decision to write a new story and live the new story.
Yeah. And you have to trust that
Yeah.
because that's locking it in. There's this funny little meme on the socials. I'm sure some of these folks have seen it if you're all following, similar content. And it's the sportscasters and they're get up and they cheer and they're cheering. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because what the copy says above it is she finally didn't get triggered by the thing that has triggered her for years. And, your little soul team on the side is like, she did it. She didn't get triggered. And it sounds so silly, but those triggers, every time you get triggered, you're pushing away a manifestation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all tied together here.
Okay, did you have one more for us?
Yeah. And so the last section that we're giving you is what I call the anchor question. And this is the one that collapses the gap being what I want and where I am versus where I want to be, who
Okay.
I am versus who I want to be. And this is the question that turns any identity into action. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. I want everybody to write this down. If I were already this version of myself, what would feel obvious this month?
Ooh, I think I need an example.
Okay. So not scary, not dramatic, just obvious. Okay. So for example, if I was already making a career from my podcast, my content, and my products in the area of manifestation and the law of attraction, obviously, I would have a book coming out this year. What am I required to do to have a book coming out this year in 2026? Does that make sense?
I think I need a little more.
Okay. I'm a little overweight. I've lost 30 pounds. I've got 30 to go. So
Okay.
the version of me that is now no longer on high blood pressure pills because I've become healthy and whole and fit and strong. If I am that version today, off high blood pressure pills, down another 30 pounds, cut and toned, not cut. Who's cut at 56? But toned, and wearing clothes that no longer make me feel frumpy. Like these are real parts of me right now. I'm becoming a different version of that. Obviously, I would have diaried into my calendar weight training 3 times a week.
Okay.
Well, that's obvious.
Right.
And when someone says to you, Jennifer, good for you, you go to the gym 3 times a week. Obviously, I do. I didn't get this from not doing that. Right. Does that make sense? It's just
Yeah.
obvious.
Right. And I think that's it is because it's so obvious, it's not initially obvious.
Exactly. It has to become part of who you are. Again, there's that verb to be.
Right.
Who am I?
Okay, so that's an interesting bunch of questions. And as Jen mentioned, we're going to have a link to it. So if you want the full set of questions, just let us know. Jen, do you have any closing reflections for us as we close this episode off?
Yeah, I know. Like, listen, we could have drawn this out into over an hour, but I really want people to go and download the worksheet. Okay. Give yourself the gift of this worksheet and spend some time, light a candle, get out your favorite pen or put it into your computer. I don't care what you do, but spend some time on this, people. Don't let another year go by where you go, I wanted to be something different at the end of this year, and here I am again.
Right.
You don't need all the answers. You're noticing the patterns. And I really do hope you give yourself the gift. So you have to invest in yourself if you want something different. Give yourself the gift of this set of questions and join us on the journey next year on this podcast in 2026. And we are going to help you stay true to yourself of who you're becoming. It all starts now.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I think what we'll do is I know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these questions, I'm going to sit with them for the next few days and really get some good clarity around how I want to be by the end of 2026. So thanks so much, Jen. It was great to have the chat with you and get ready for the next podcast that we'll be providing you for the rest of 2026. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, believer or skeptic. And don't forget to leave us a review so others can join in the debate. Plus, check out Jennifer's TikTok account, Manifestation RX, where she writes daily prescriptions for manifesting your dreams. Think practical tips with a dash of magic. We love hearing your questions and stories, so tell us what you're manifesting or questioning this week. Until next time, keep an open mind and maybe manifest a little magic.